You know what's crazy about the whole Carmelo Anthony situation is that somebody is no longer breathing, but yet he is portrayed as the bad guy. How is somebody going to take somebody else's life away and be portrayed as a victim? Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know that is circulating around the web, just found out that a woman took the life of a retired vet in a parking lot over a parking space. Now, let me know in the comment section, did she provoke the situation? Because obviously the two entities was feeling some type of way. The man proceeded to follow the black lady around a parking lot. She pulled out her 9 millimeter and she took the life away of that vet. Is that self-defense? See, what we have to understand is that this is selective outrage. How is it self-defense when you're marching around the parking lot with a hand gun, threatening somebody's life, talking about if you keep following me, I'm gonna shoot you? Is that how it works? I thought somebody would have to be in the facility of your area, put hands on you, you know, break your property. I don't think that man did that. He was unarmed. We're gonna cover that video later. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a group of victims with a certain darker skin complexion crying wolf, talking about, oh my God, the blacks, they're hunting the blacks, they're hunting the blacks. It's so hard to be a black man in America. I can have higher credentials, but somebody with a lighter skin complexion will get the job just because I'm black. You got to stop the cap. Pushing is one thing. 2024, if you were trying to monetize, you are on the platform of YouTube and you're trying to finesse, okay, but how you gonna be doing the same tricks year after year after year, pressing the record button and portraying all these insecurities in front of the camera, talking about blacks are the victim. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, no soy dominicano, pero ya tú sabes what a time to be alive. Happy 4th of July, regardless of your political views, regardless if you even celebrate the 4th of July. If you are free and you have your health, you are blessed. Something that Austin Metcalf unfortunately can no longer experience because somebody's too emotional and can't use their God-given two hands and fight. But instead, they want to bring this individual, Carmelo Anthony, he wants to bring a weapon on school grounds, on school property. And do you know the excuses what they saying to justify the actions of Carmelo Anthony? That he was scared for his life. Oh my God, if I was scared for my life, I would have did the same thing too. Can we stop acting ignorant? I understand ignorance is bliss, but let's add context into the situation. This took place on school property at a track meet. It wasn't owned by the HOA, Homeowners Association. It wasn't owned by the neighborhood. He was in the facility that was owned by the school. Now, you have to abide by the rules where you work at, just like in school. They have rules and guidelines for you to follow. Why does Carmelo Anthony, how does that exclude him just because he was scared for his life? Then, ladies and gentlemen, they proceeded to tell the masses that, oh man, Carmelo Anthony suffers through seizures. He didn't want to get hit because if he got hit, his life would be on the line, his life would be on jeopardy. Excuses, excuses, excuses. If you look at the footage, clear as day, there was an altercation. Carmelo Anthony ran to the coach talking about, I told him not to put his hands on me. I told him F around and find out. So you know the consequences of your actions. You're fully capable. You can't plead insanity like you didn't know the whereabouts of the consequences of your actions. You know what you was doing. He could have, ladies and gentlemen, pointed that 3.5 pocket knife that was portrayed as a cleat sharpener. Can y'all believe they was calling the pocket knife a cleat sharpener? It's one thing for other people to say, but when your own people is lying to justify something, why? Just because he shares the same skin color as you? Let me set the record straight. Just because you have the same skin doesn't mean they share the best interest of you. And that's why also a lie that I have to debunk. Another lie talking about, oh my God, how come the jury was all white? That's not a jury of your peers. Well, if you look up the definition of jury of your peers, They should have the best interest of you and keep it fair between the middle. They interviewed a select few members of blacks and they said verbatim they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So why would you put somebody in a jury if they don't have the capacity to keep it honest? You're going to have to keep it fair on both sides. But what I'm just so confused about, ladies and gentlemen, is how is somebody at a high school event that had no business being there, ladies and gentlemen, he was suspended and he was at a rival school. He was invited by Judas to that tent. I think he also should face some type of persecutions. But even though Judas invited Carmelo Anthony to that tent, he didn't tell Carmelo Anthony to pull out a pocket knife on school grounds. How is a push going to justify a deletion?
Got some notes from our local reporter who is inside the courtroom. So when that guilty verdict was read, I'm told that Carmelo Anthony was crying. He was shaking. His defense attorney kept his arm around his shoulders the entire time. And also I'm told that Austin Metcalf.
He was crying. What are you crying for? Keep it 10 toes down. You took a life away. How does the father feel that he no longer has a son? And you know what's sick about that, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have people glorifying the death of Austin Metcalf, saying that they was racist and the father's racist. And if he had any type of good parenting skills, then his son would still be alive. If people are exposing themselves for the hatred that is within themselves, the demons that is deep inside the heart is being exposed from the Charlie Kirk situation to this situation. They don't like a certain skin complexion. Let's keep it a beam. Let's keep it a stack. Selective outrage. Where's the videos for the other crimes? There's a recent story of a woman taking the life of a retired veteran, and they're talking about self-defense. We got to stop. We got to hold our people accountable so we don't be a laughing stock and people can take us serious, because everything is being explained, excuses are being brought to the masses except for self-accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, I can barely even speed down the road without checking over my six, making sure I don't get pulled over. I brought a T99 calculator to the fourth, fifth grade, knowing damn well I shouldn't have brought a calculator, and it got confiscated, and it was just a calculator. How on your God-given brain on top of your shoulders are you going to think it's okay to carry a pocket knife? Well, you know what the response to that is, ladies and gentlemen? People say, oh, well, you have the right to defend yourself. In the state of Texas, down south, anything under 3.5 is legal. Absolutely, you do have the right to defend yourself. On school grounds, you do not have a right to bring that. People spending 2, 3, 4 hours on live streams plus talking about everything except for the common denominator. And what is the common denominator? Two of them, actually. One, he's on school property. Two, he has a pocket knife. Remove the pocket knife from the situation, ladies and gentlemen, we probably wouldn't even know about Carmelo Anthony. Now, do you know how they justifying the men's actions? They are saying he was a straight A student. They were saying that not only was he an athlete, as soon as he was done with school, he went to work at 9 to 5. He was driving luxury vehicles, everything materialistic except for the decision making and the logical process of pulling out a weapon just because of a push, just because of a racial slur. So words are impacting your life so much that you have to make the irrational decision to take a life away just because you're feeling some type of way. How does that make sense? And then they were trying to give him life. They settled for 35 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Carmelo Anthony was never going to see the light of day again. And I believe an eye for an eye, correct? How come one man doesn't get to see the light of day and the other gets to see daylight at the age of 50? And you know what? Don't feel sorry for him. People say, oh, I feel so sorry for Carmelo Anthony. He's such a young man. He's such a promising future for Carmelo. He was a straight A student. He was a phenomenal athlete. He had nice cars. Why is nobody talking about a life that is no longer here? Now, are we perfect? I'm not going to press the record button and act like I'm holier than thou, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I have my skeletons in my closet where I made plenty of mistakes. By the grace of the Most High, I'm able to see the next day. It's not by my mistake, that is the end all be all, that somebody's going to remove myself from this planet because of a bad decision. Did Austin Metcalf did he make a bad decision by approaching Carmelo Anthony? I can't say that because Carmelo Anthony had no business being there in the first place. He was suspended and he was at a rival school, even though he was invited. Let's stop playing stupid and ignorant. Let's use our brain. Why would you, as a 12th grader, you're not a third grader or first grader, you are about to graduate high school, why would you go to a rival school? Now, on the 4th of July, Austin Metcalf can't see the fireworks. He didn't have the opportunity to rock the stage. He can't go to his selective college. He can't potentially reach the milestones of life because somebody wants to be a coward. Just because somebody, shout out to Daniel Barry Sports Highlights in the building. Just because somebody shares the same skin color as you doesn't mean you got to ride by them. Oh, they stick by theirs, so I'm gonna stick by mine. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a testimony. We have documentation of protesters on the streets talking about they ride for theirs, so I'm gonna ride for mine. This lady that answered that question, she was asked if evidence comes out that Carmelo Anthony is innocent, will you still stand by him? She said yes. What? No. If evidence comes out that Carmelo Anthony is innocent, I will publicly apologize. Will I delete any of my videos? I've been covering this case for about 2 weeks, and all these videos are going to stay up because the evidence that is out current day is the only way that I can judge. How am I going to judge calling Carmelo Anthony innocent when the video footage is out? He had a pocket knife, even though he had no priors. You don't do that. You had enough common sense to run to the coach. You knew where authority figure was at. It's not like his back was up against the wall somewhere in New York City. We got to stop the cap. All the excuses in the book, except for self accountability, don't make no sense. Crazy work.
Metcalf's twin brother Hunter. This was the first time he was inside the courtroom when that guilty verdict was read. I'm told it was really emotional from both sides after that murder verdict. And as for what's next, Will, now it's the sentencing phase. He is charged with murder, so he could face up to life in prison. The same exact juror, they're the ones who decide how long he remains behind bars. And that's what this sentencing phase sentencing phase is. That reporter inside the courtroom tells me that Carmelo Anthony's mother, she's already taken the stand. This is a direct quote. She said, quote, "He is my oldest, my firstborn, my baby. I love him very much." I'm told that she had mascara running down her face and asked the jury, quote, "Please have mercy on my son." And then the prosecutor sort of cross-examined her and said, "Isn't it true you could still have a relationship with your son while he's behind bars?" So this is sort of the next phase right now. The jury's going to decide how long he is behind bars.
The mother of Carmelo Anthony was seen crying with mascara running down her face. We don't care about your tears going down your face. Is it a very unfortunate situation? Absolutely. Your son pulled out a knife. Did you teach your son to use his hands and to defend himself the right way? He was on school property, and maybe if he was more close to your son, he would feel safe to tell you, "Yo, mom, I'm getting bullied at school. I know y'all got bread. You took me out the hood, but nobody out here looks like me. I am the minority, and they're picking on me." Then we can have a conversation with the school principal, counselor, sit down with Austin Metcalf, see what's really going on. And if he didn't want to be a snitch and he wanted to handle the business on his own, he didn't have to pull out a knife. Plenty of occasions, plenty of situations where I find myself in trouble, and never once did I think of bringing a deadly weapon to school. Not only is Carmelo Anthony an endangerment to himself by bringing that on school property, but he's an endangerment to everybody around him. Why? Just even having that alone on school property is a felon. You can't even smoke a cigarette on school property. How do you think you're going to bring a knife? Then you know what people are saying, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, well, he had the right to defend himself, not with a knife on school property.
for, and they're going to call some character witnesses, including his mom that you just heard from. And I'll step out of the way. I mean, outside the courtroom, we've been expecting this, Will, but about 100 Carmelo Anthony protesters erupted out here. At least one person was detained after they read that guilty verdict. And as you can see, it is all hands on deck when it comes to the sheriff's office. They prepared for this. There's been barriers out here and really tight security the last few days.
35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not.
Let's debunk that, Miss Crockett. He's not a kid. In the state of Texas, you are an adult at the age of 17. Now, if Carmelo Anthony was 16, then he would be trialed as a teenager. But once again, in the state of Texas, once you reach 17, you are an adult. So he's weighing $130. How is he going to handle business behind bars in TDC, Texas Directional Center? That he's going to spend plus 30 years. Well, he's definitely going to reflect on why was he so emotional to bring a knife out. And it's premeditated because he verbatim told Osman Cap, touch me and find out what happens. Does that not sound like premeditated to you? Because that's one thing that was crossing my mind is how is a first-time offender going to get such a heavy charge, 30 plus years? But after doing my research, nah, bro, you can't bring no knife to school. Another story, another rebuttal that I see is that, well, how come a lighter skin complexion does the same thing, if not worse, but get a lesser charge? Well, compared to cases, 1 wasn't premeditated, 2 wasn't on school property, 3 was that person that was guilty, was they remorseful? Was they apologetic? Because Carmelo Anthony and his family wasn't apologetic at all in the courtroom. How come there wasn't a plea bargain? How come no deal was done? Well, he was represented by a public attorney. How is the family going to receive over $700K in donations, but y'all can't get a lawyer? You're going to be represented by a public attorney that is free? Stop the cap.
His team's tent as it was raining and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a black person.
So just because somebody's larger than you at a track meet where coaches are around, authoritative figures are around, students are around, your back wasn't up against the wall, there wasn't cameras, it's not like he was in some dark alley where there was no camera present. There was multiple avenues for him to practice to avoid that situation. If he's so scared because he's suffering from seizures, then if confrontation faces you, then you need to run like Joseph and don't look back. But he wanted to keep it 10 toes down, delete somebody, then have the sympathy for him, talking about, is he going to be okay? I told him not to put his hands on me. We can't play the black card every single time somebody gets in trouble. Somebody has to say it. Because all I see is black creators making content defending. No black can do no wrong. They're invincible. So if you have that mindset, ladies and gentlemen, then please unsubscribe, dislike, and move around. Because self-accountability has to be practiced. If you're not accountable, then that is demonic. How is there no consequences for your actions
in this country? But just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person, even though they...
Y'all see what they're doing, talking about police injustice. That has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony. And that's another thing that these content creators are doing. They're mixing the George Floyd, the Zimmermans, all the Emmett Till's, all the past police brutality has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony. As a matter of fact, the police was being very respectful and kind after he just deleted somebody. They said Carmelo is alleged, and he corrected the police officer by saying, no, he's not alleged. He's the one that did it.
They are trained. The fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this black boy said that I was scared.
In this case, nobody is hating Carmelo because he is black. They are hating Carmelo because he killed someone.
When they selected jury, I was there the last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's so bad that pastors are talking about this case. Now, you would think, as a man of God, he is supposed to be the middleman to translate the Bible in terms where a baby can comprehend. But instead, he wants to bring his political views in the church, as if the congregation doesn't have the right to have a mind of their own. What if somebody that's listening to this pastor within the church walls is against Carmelo Anthony, but you're trying to persuade the church as if it's law? Now, you can have a difference of opinion, but you have, once again, a man of God that doesn't pay taxes is using his platform to preach BS in the church. And that's why the church, after 2020, I stopped going, because one, I don't want to be around people, even though I'm around people when I'm at my 9 to 5. But it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of, and it's the bad ones that mess it up for the good ones. You are manipulating the innocent minds, because, ladies and gentlemen, for the ones that don't know the Bible, they're going to listen to the pastor as if his opinion and voice is law. So he's leading people off a cliff by his ignorance.
Courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Carmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney didn't have.
You sat there disgusted because there was no black juries. It was only white, Snow White, and you feel some type of way about white people. Well, once again, the reason why there wasn't no black jury was because they interviewed the black jury members prior to the case starting, and they said they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So why, after that statement, would you put that individual in the courtroom, knowing that they don't have the brain capacity to judge correctly? That's why there wasn't no black jury, not because of racism, but because, once again, they interviewed the black selective jury members, and they said they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. After somebody confesses that, why would you put that person in the courtroom? That's not the best interest of nobody. We gotta stop the cap. Shout out to every single one of y'all in the chat. Let me go to the polls. We got 14 votes in the building. Is Carmelo Anthony innocent? We got 86% saying no, and a whopping 13% saying yes. For the ones that think Carmelo Anthony is innocent, please let me know in the chat.
Had the nerve to paint Carmelo Anthony as a monster of a man, and then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was?
He's not a little boy. He's a grown-ass man in the state of Texas. Even though the brain doesn't develop for a man at the age of 20, until the age of 24, 25, the prefrontal cortex, where it is your decision-making. He was 17 in the state of Texas. He's grown. That's why he's tried as an adult.
Non-black jury, and you gonna stop.
Look at this, not a pastor. You know, you go to church to get refilled, to be rejuvenated, to be replenished, to go back into the world and attack and take life by the horns. But instead, they're standing up, the congregation standing up, clapping over this nonsense his pastor is screwing out. Does he not understand that a life is no longer here because Carmelo Anthony decided to be too emotional, because he was so much of a punk? He had to pull out a weapon when Austin Metcalf, he didn't pull out a weapon. And you know what people are saying now, ladies and gentlemen? They're saying that it wasn't even Carmelo Anthony's knife. They're saying that it was somebody else's knife. They're also saying that the brother of Austin Metcalf, he knows the truth. That's why he didn't testify, because he would have broke down under pressure. They're talking trash to the father. The father no longer has a son. So you got to give him somewhat of a pass. Now, two wrongs don't make a right, but also he lost a son on school property. I would be mad at the facility. I'll be mad at the authority figures, the teachers, the coaches. I would sue the school, but the school gave the students the benefit of the doubt that nobody's going to pass away on school grounds. At the most, it'll be a fight. If you have a disagreement, what happens? Meet me after class, or meet me in the restroom, or meet me when school's over. We're not going to fight in school. And if he fight in school, you already know you're gonna get detention, maybe even sent to a alternative school for X amount of months. Maybe have to do some type of probation, get your parents involved, court fees, etc., etc. But nobody' life was on the line. So Carmelo Anthony's life was on the line so much, his life was threatened so much that he was scared for his life because 200 plus pound white boys were surrounding him. Stop the cap.
About self, you're going to talk about de-escalation. You're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down.
You know what I'm mostly disappointed on is that people with kids with multiple degrees are making content defending Carmelo Anthony. Now, I understand you have the right to your opinion. Just because I think somewhere doesn't mean you have to agree with my thought process. But situations like Charlie Kirk, people was glorifying Charlie Kirk because of his political views, justifying his death because of what he was saying out of his mouth, as if he doesn't have the right to say whatever he wants to say. Those same people got suspended from college. Then they want to cry, talking about, I didn't know I was going to get suspended. I didn't know that I was going to get expelled from college. Well, you're spreading hate. And now with this situation, ladies and gentlemen, people giving all the excuses underneath the sun except for self accountability. So much so that the pastor has to go behind the pulpit and preach out BS.
Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse and they came up to me. They said, thank you for being here, Pastor. But my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can.
Y'all see what they doing? What does George Zimmerman have to do with Carmelo Anthony? So once again, they want to play victim and cry wolf and categorize all the police brutality all in one box and just be like, oh man, y'all don't like blacks. No, we got to be accountable. Carmelo Anthony should have never had the knife. Remove that knife from that situation, we wouldn't even know these two people exist until they made the league, potentially, because they was athletes. So we would hear their name on the news for being an athlete, not because a life was taken because somebody wants to be a punk, because Carmelo Anthony wants to be a coward. And if the evidence comes out that he's innocent and the knife was never in his possession, then I will publicly apologize. But I'm not just going to assume, and I'm going to base my decision making on the facts. And the facts is it wasn't a cleat sharpener, because that's what a lot of people are saying, that Carmelo Anthony was using a cleat sharpener. I never even heard of a cleat sharpener until this case. Then they talking about he had a weapon from shop, and you're allowed to walk around high school because you just left shop, and that's on school grounds. But after doing a little bit of research, once again, it was a whole pocket knife. Sharp. It didn't come with bells and whistles, a can opener, a wine opener. No. Why do you have this in your possession in a very well kept school? It's not like he was growing up in the hood somewhere in the ghetto, have to check his six. Then the courtroom can somewhat have some type of sympathy for Carmelo Anthony because you're growing up in a very treacherous, very unsafe environment. You have to check your six. There's been plenty of cases of people passing away on school grounds. That wasn't that case. On that school, that's probably the first death on school ground ever. And every student that was a witness are now traumatized for life, and they have to move on because they saw cold blood just because of a disagreement. Ladies and gentlemen, when you go out to the bar, you see people fight all the time. Do you ever see a knife being pulled out? And even if, let's play devil advocate, and Carmelo Anthony has a knife in his hand, which he did have a knife in his hand, but let's go inside the mind of Carmelo Anthony. You pull out a knife. Why don't you play possum? You could have bluffed and scared them, like, back up, bro. I mean business. If you step any closer, you know what time it is. That's it. You could have had them shook, but to actually commit the action to thrust that into somebody's chest as if that's not a vital organ. You could have stabbed somebody's arms, their face. He could have been blind. You know what I'm saying? He could have lost his nose. He could have been bleeding severely, but he would have had enough time potentially at a paramedics arriving to the scene, fixing the wound, rushing Austin Metcalf to the hospital if he was attacked in the face or the arm or even the leg. But you want to stab somebody in the heart like he's a vampire. Then you got pastors defending the man, talking about they're against blacks. The ignorance is crazy. The ignorance is at an all-time high. It's in the church house. And what I feel most sorry for, ladies and gentlemen, is for the new believers that attend church and they think the pastor is law and the pastors is preaching out BS. So now you're disrupting the souls of the ignorant, of the innocent, trying to go to church for the word of God, but instead they're hearing Carmelo Anthony is a victim. How, Sway?
Day when they selected jury. I was there the last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Carmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney then had the nerve to paint Carmelo Anthony as a monster of a man. And then he closed out.
The man deleted a life. Austin Metcalf is no longer here. He doesn't have the opportunity to enjoy the 4th of July like the rest of us. He was the team captain of his school, overheard that Carmelo Anthony was on his school grounds. I mean, does he own the school? No, but I mean, y'all know the politics of high school. If you're the team captain and you hear the rival is on your school grounds, then yeah, you're going to approach that guy. What are you doing there? Why are you doing there? Because you want to holler at some girls? He has a plus honor roll resume on his transcript. He has a 9 to 5. He's a phenomenal athlete. All these accolades, but you don't have the thought process to understand that if you go to the school and you're suffering from seizures, there's a possibility that you're going to be approached by the opposing member team captain, and he's going to question you. Why are you here? He also gave him a chance, telling him to leave. He didn't leave. There's so many examples where Carmelo Anthony could have left the scene, but he decided to stay underneath that tent. Then after he committed the action, that's when he wants to run away. Well, you should have run away you shouldn't have never even been there. And that makes a certain amount of people mad, saying, well, blacks have the right to be anywhere they want to be. It's not the Jim Crow laws. It's not 1935. It's not 1920. Stop acting ignorant. He was suspended. He was at the rival school and he was told to leave. Why was he in there? Why was he anywhere at that facility in the first place? Then they weren't talking about it was raining so hard and he didn't want to get soaked. That's why he was underneath the tent. So now he has 30 years to think, I could have been wet and still have my freedom, but because I didn't want to be wet, I was underneath the rival school's tent. Anyone in the chat, would you go to a rival school tent? As a matter of fact, for my previous jobs, I feel some type of way even going to old jobs that I used to have, and I was employed there. Matter of fact, even the current job that I have, I feel some type of way going to that job when I'm off, just to be politically correct. How on your brain do you think it's okay to go to a rival school like problems is not going to arise? Then when the problems come, there's no self-accountability. The true victim is Austin Metcalf, because even though he approached Carmelo Anthony and he may have called him racial slurs, he may have put his hands on Carmelo Anthony, talking about, well, he should have never put his hands on him. He effed around and found out. So in high school, you push somebody, does that mean you deserve to die? Just because you put your hand, just because you push somebody? Are we being serious?
With this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in college.
The jury of all non-blacks. Let's debunk that once again. They interview black potential members, and they said they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So why would you, after hearing that statement, still put that very emotional black jury in the courtroom? That is no justice. That is not fair for both parties. It's not fair for Austin Metcalf or Carmelo. They want to say there was no black juries. They want to say the media couldn't go in the courtroom. They want to say the knife wasn't a knife. They want to say the video that was released on Juneteenth that it was edited. They want to say the knife was never in the possession of Carmelo Anthony. Everything except for accountability.
County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was saying?
What does seizures have to do with anything? Stop the cap. Seizures? Okay, I'm constipated, so I had to delete somebody because I'm constipated. Like, what are we talking about?
That all non-black jury, and you're going to talk about you're going to talk about de-escalation, you're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down. Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse, and they came up to me. They said, "Thank you for being here, Pastor. But my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can hunt down Trayvon Martin, and he can get off for stand your ground. But this boy, our friend, can't even defend him."
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, my microphone was on mute. So Carmelo Anthony is being portrayed as the victim, but he's still alive. His life was not on jeopardy just because. Do y'all see the picture that's on the screen? How is he not able to remove himself from that situation? He can easily run left, right, up, down. His back is not against anything. Yeah, it's raining, but who cares about a little rain? It's not like it was a hurricane or a tornado. And if you really are suffering from seizures and you know damn well you have no capability of receiving a punch, then why would you even tease the altercation? Talking about touch me and find out what happens.
Okay. He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me.
And this photo of the Ozark. Some notes from our local reporter who is inside the courtroom. So when that guilty verdict was read, I'm told that Carmelo Anthony was crying. He was shaking. His defense attorney kept his arm around his shoulders the entire time. And also I'm told that Austin Metcalf's twin brother, Hunter, this was the first time he was.
This is sad. Because if the roles was reversed, God forbid, and if you do have kids and your kid was deleted because of a disagreement, then you will feel some type of way. We understand kids are going to be kids. Kids are going to fight. I fought in high school. I put my parents through a high level of stress going through the, judge and going through some type of class for anger management and understanding that there's a time and place for everything. But through my consequence, through my actions, I understood that, okay, if I continue to do this, this is what's going to happen. Austin Metcalf doesn't have that capability of experiencing life because somebody wants to be a coward. But he gets a pass. He gets content creators making video after video every single day talking about he's innocent, bringing people on their platform talking about a witness. What? At this point, they're just finessing YouTube. They want Carmelo Anthony to be innocent just because he's black, but no sympathy for Austin Metcalf. And these same people are exposing themselves for being racist, for being racist. I'm just going to go ahead and say they're exposing themselves for being racist because you can't dislike somebody all you want, but to glorify the next man downfall is demonic work. Anybody happy that somebody is no longer breathing, run away from them. Disassociate yourself with them, unfollow them, block them, do everything but talk to them. Run away, like what Foster said to Simba. Or was a scar? It was scar. Run and don't look back. For the ones that are glorifying death, if that's your friend or anybody of your facility or your premises, remove yourself from that person ASAP. Glorifying death just because of a difference of opinion?
Inside the courtroom when that guilty verdict was read. I'm told it was really emotional from both sides after that murder verdict. And as for what's next, Will, now it's the sentencing phase. He is charged with murder, so he face up to life in prison. The same exact juror, they're the ones who...
Crazy work. Let me go into the polls. We got 41 votes in the building. 80% says no, Carmelo Anthony is not innocent. And a whopping 20% says Carmelo Anthony is innocent. Please let me know in the chat why you feel that way. That is it for my time. Make sure that you rate this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'm out of here.
Do shit. I'm dancing. You ain't gonna 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 do shit.